It troubles me so much. It troubles me beyond words to know that there are people who are good, hard workers, who've worked their whole lives, who've provided very well for their families, but they just never were taught how money can work for you. And therefore, they are going to have to work until the day they die. And that is jacked up. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Picture It Personal Finance, where I ask you to picture your goal, know that you can achieve it, and enjoy the process. My name is Tina, and today I want to speak with you about my story. I recently read in a financial coach playbook the importance of knowing your why in pursuing coaching as a practice. I've known the importance of understanding your why from a TED Talk that I had watched years ago by Simon Sinek. Further, I watch a lot of successful people. I love motivational YouTube channels and podcasts, and it is extremely common for that expression of understanding your why to further your ability to have success. If you have a superficial why, you're less likely to be successful. But if you have a fundamental core why, a deep why, a long reaching why, that is probably going to be sufficient to drive you through the difficult periods with whatever goal you're pursuing so that you persevere to the end. I understand that it's really important not just to know my why, but to have my stories that back up and justify or explain, not justify, but explain how they came to frame my why. And there are, for me, 5 stories that ultimately led me to a very specific why. And my why is that I do not want anyone to feel trapped by their debt in a way that prohibits them from making a decision for their life that they really want. Or put in a more affirmative way, I want every person to be free financially to make decisions that serve their lives in a way that is most aligned with their ideal life for themselves. I came to this conclusion after seeing a few things in my personal life. None of them are comfortable things that I've experienced or witnessed. They are personal and they came with suffering. They came with malcontent. They came with frustration and fear. But I truly believe that when you have these experiences, it's as though they're done to forge you in a new way. When you experience difficulties in your life, you can look at them as a victim, like they've put you down, or you can use them as a motivation to grow and to change. And that is what my 5 stories have done. My first story is one that's related to my mom. When I graduated from college, I expected to come out of college debt free. I had realized that my parents were taking loans out in my name, but I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I had a commitment from my parents that they would pay for my education. I knew they were taking loans out in my name, but I also truly believed that they would cover all the payments. Unfortunately, my mom had created a bit of a shell game with debt. She was really robbing from Peter to pay Paul, as the saying goes. Once I graduated, I was thinking I would have zero debt that I would be responsible for, which I know is very foolish, but please, I was 18 when this started and 21 when it ended, and I really didn't understand the ramifications of taking out loans or any of that. I really was not raised with any financial understanding. So while I knew the loans were in my name, I truly didn't think that I would be held accountable to paying them back because I thought my parents would. When it came out that my mom had been manipulating a variety of debts, parent plus loans, student loans, a second mortgage on the house, and then also credit cards, my dad found out about it. And, honestly, the shit hit the fan. He was livid. And the outcome was that they had $50,000 in debt, not counting my $20,000 in student loan debt, that they had to clean up. And because of that, my dad pretty much said, I'm so sorry to do this to you, but your debt is on you now, and we can no longer take that over. And the sheer panic washed over me like I can't explain to you. I went into student loan deferment and I paid the minimum payment. Well, in deferment, you don't have to pay anything, but what I did was I paid interest only because I looked at it like at least it won't get any bigger if I pay the interest. And then I can, when I get a better paying job, at the time I was, I think, working as a deli clerk for Albertsons. When I got a better paying job, I would be able to start really tackling it. And that's ultimately what I did. But this was my first experience where the fear of debt was put on me, and also the disaster of what debt can do or having financial infidelity can do in a marriage, because it was extremely difficult for my parents to recover from that because the seeds of mistrust were sown. My second story is a few years later. So that first story kind of all happened when I turned 21 or when I was 21. Then when I was 26, my boyfriend and I at the time, husband now, were looking for a home, and we were pretty broke. We were living comfortably because we really didn't have anything to take care of besides ourselves. I had my bit of student loan debt. We both had car payments, but we decided that this was a lie we told ourselves, there's only two businesses that never lose money: real estate and organized crime. So we were convinced that we should buy a house. We did end up buying a house, but because we really did not have any money put down, and because we weren't making a tremendous amount of money ourselves, we both worked in call centers, we financed a house, a $190,000 house, with a first and second mortgage split. We did the first mortgage, a 30-year interest-only loan, and then we did the second mortgage, a 5-year ARM with a balloon payment at the end. And in my mind, I thought, no problem, we got this. We'll just refinance in 3 years because the property is going to go up in value and it'll be wonderful. We'll have our house and we'll be building our wealth. Well, this all happened in February of 2007. So some of you may recall that by the end of that year, Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, I think, had their big collapse, and the bubble burst in 2008, and we were upside down. We bought the house for $189,000. By the end of 2008, it was worth $145,000, and now we had this 5-year ARM with a balloon payment hovering over our heads. And let me tell you, I had not budgeted until that point. That was the beginning of me establishing a budget, because we really had to, before I even was aware of, Dave Ramsey and the beans and rice mantra, that's where we were. We completely freaked out and paid, I think, triple the payment on the second mortgage to help us get rid of it. And in the end, I also started going back to school, and I was getting tuition reimbursement. So this is kind of shady because I was doing a bit of what my mom had taught me, to rob from Peter to pay Paul. But I was taking out student loans to pay for school, and then I was getting a tuition reimbursement from my company, and I was using my tuition reimbursement to pay back credit cards we had at the time, pay back my cars, and pay back or pay down that second mortgage along with our triple payments. By the time I graduated from college, that was right around when that 5-year ARM was coming due, and I'm telling you guys, we made it by the skin of our teeth. But the good news out of all of that is I graduated with my MBA, and at that time the only debt we had was our mortgage and my student loans, but those bad boys had grown to $75,000, which leads right into story number 3. So for story number 3, I was now budgeting, and I was very consistent with my budget, and we were making much better money at this point. So I'm walking into a phase of life where I'm pregnant with my daughter. We've just relocated after getting married to Colorado, and we are living according to a budget, but we are pretty much setting aside retirement savings and living, for the most part, everything else paycheck to paycheck, because we were unable to sell the house in Minnesota, and now we're living in Colorado, so we have to pay the mortgage for the house in Minnesota plus rent for the place that we were staying at in Colorado. And ultimately, I felt really good about everything right up until I realized a major budgeting mistake that I had made. I had thought that the amount of daycare costs for a pay period would be $250, but it was really $250 a week because we get paid every 2 weeks. So, in other words, our budget was short $500 a month, and because I was now paying $600 in student loan payments every month, and I had those, the mortgage and the rent and just the other living expenses, frankly, we were back in trouble. Oh, and by the way, we had managed to let our credit cards climb back up again because even though we paid them off previously, we didn't cut them up, and so we were on a horrendous roller coaster. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know that we would have made it through that except for my mom passed away. And the irony about all of this, if you can call it ironic, is that I ended up receiving some life insurance money from her that wiped out my student loans. And in the end, I do tend to tell people, not that anybody really asks, but I do say to people, oh yeah, my mom paid for my college, but not in the way that people think. What happened was when she passed away, I used that life insurance money that I got from her to pay off my student loans, so that now that $600 a month I was paying to student loans could cover that $500 gap that we had in the budget. The timing of my mom's passing was horrible, and I would rather have her any day of the week and keep those student loan, that debt. But the way it all unfolded was she passed a month before my daughter was born. I did not know I was getting life insurance money. I'm grieving, I'm freaking out about money, thinking we're never gonna make ends meet. And then the check showed up in the mail and I couldn't believe it. And I just praised God and I just thanked my mother and said, thank you for having the wisdom to look out for me even in your death. And because of that, I do now say that my mom paid for my college, both my undergrad and my master's degree, because it essentially covered everything I owed on those debts. Anyway, terrible time of my life, completely wrought with grief and pain and suffering, but I grew out of it tremendously. And I'll tell you what, I am so against student loan debt now, and I will never let my children take that out. I will tell them to work 2 jobs while they're going to school before I let them take out that debt, because it was horrible and it was a burden. Fast forward. Now life has stabilized. We actually found Dave Ramsey a little while later. We stayed on that financial roller coaster for a few more years, to be honest, 2 more years to be exact. My son was born 2 years about after my daughter was born. And I'll be honest with you guys, even then we were just playing that, we're doing really good, I'll go ahead and take out a car loan. Or, oh, we're doing really good, it's okay if we put that on the credit card and let the credit card climb back up to $5,000. We had received multiple pay increases and promotions at work, and we felt like, honestly, we were in the top 10%. We're high income earners and we felt very cush. And then I started to really long to be home with my children. I really longed to be able to pursue a different kind of life. I started learning more about life coaching, and this is where the desire to coach started to really manifest in me, and I couldn't do it. I was terrified. I was out earning my husband, and I really believed, and I still do, that at that time, because of the debt that we carried, I would be unable to leave my career behind to spend more time with my children and start pursuing a career path that would be more meaningful to me. I felt trapped and I hated that feeling, but that feeling is what drove me to figure out finally that I can be debt free. I found Dave Ramsey while I was investigating ways to get out of that trap, and look at where it's brought me now. About 6 months into my Dave Ramsey story, I come to, I guess, my 5th story, my last story that has completely and utterly and fundamentally put me on the path that I am now. And that was my dad passed away. When he passed away, I was completely and utterly gutted. I felt like an orphan. I was 36 at the time, and I just truly felt like an orphan. I'm a 36-year-old orphan who had loving parents who were my biggest fans, but something about losing both your parents, it just is gut-wrenching. And when he passed away, we had to go up to handle his estate. And in handling his estate, I was just so incredibly sad. Here was a man who provided for his family his whole life. But because of the mishaps that my mom had made with money, because she had more problems even after that one I mentioned earlier, he had to refinance his house and clean up some pretty significant credit card and consumer debt. And by the time we were cleaning up his estate, there was no way he could have retired. He passed away at 64. He wanted to retire at 65. And I wish that I had learned things about money sooner. I wish that I could have taught my dad. It actually really chokes me up, so I'm going to try not to get choked up, but it upsets me that he worked his whole life and that he never got a chance to retire because he didn't have a good understanding of money. And so he passed away a year before he was going to retire. But I'll be honest, guys, I'm not so sure he could have lived off of what he had. And he would have never asked for help. He was so old school and so he was just like a great dad. Anyway, that troubles me. It troubles me so much. It troubles me beyond words to know that there are people who are good, hard workers, who've worked their whole lives, who've provided very well for their families, but they just never were taught how money can work for you, and therefore they are going to have to work until the day they die, and that is jacked up. So this is why. This is why I care so much about cleaning up your finances. This is why I want people to be out of debt. This is why I want people to budget. This is why it's so important for you to know what to do with your money. I don't want any of you to be trapped. All right, guys, I feel like, that got a little heavy, so I'm just gonna leave it at that, but that is my why. It's a powerful why. It means a lot to me, and I know that it's gonna give me what I need to persevere and make this business successful. I want you all to think about why you are doing what you do. What are your goals? Why are they important? Understand that why and know that it's deep and know that it's meaningful and know that it's far-reaching, because when it is, you will get the grit, the perseverance, the utter deep, fundamental desire to succeed at that goal. And I want that for each and every one of you. All right, guys, I will see you in the next video. Have a good one.